this is something to keep our eye on as well. Should we start with number 2? Change of conversation. It says Rasta woman finds her feminist voice. So should we start with number 2? Rasta woman finds her feminist voice. This came with a link that's going to take us to YouTube. We'll watch the video as always, and then we will discuss.
Or a perspective on the program. And my guest today is a woman whose book in English, published around a year ago, has been so successful, it's now been translated and is being released now as well here in France. Launched later tonight, in fact, at the Maison de la Poésie here in Paris. Safiya Sinclair's How to Say Babylon, or Dear Babylon here in France, is her story as she tried to break free of her very rigid Rastafarian upbringing. She and her mother were ruled by her father's strict patriarchal views and repressive control, but she broke free to find her own voice as a woman and as a poet, and she joins us here on set. Thanks very much for coming in to talk to us today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Tell us about that upbringing in Jamaica. I mean, how hard and strict was it?
I mean, it was very strict. For the Rastafari, they have different rules for the men than they are for the women, and for girls. And so there was a control over, how we could dress. We had to keep our arms and our knees covered. Some Rasta girls and women had to cover their hair. We couldn't wear pants, couldn't wear jewelry or makeup. Anything that was seen as an adornment or not humble was not accepted. And so, the restrictions became quite difficult, the older I got, because I began to question some of those rules and why they were different based on my gender.
Yeah, the Rastafarianism, I mean, it's sort of against corrupt Western influences, against Babylon, isn't it?
Yes. And so for the Rastafari, Babylon represents anything connected to Western ideology, to colonialism, imperialism, slavery, anything that they see as oppressive to the Rasta brethren or the Rasta family, they call that Babylon.
And did it go as far as being a violent upbringing, would you say?
I would say sometimes things went to the extreme in the ideology, and my father had a lot of fear that Babylon would become a corruptive influence. And I think he became very protective of us, which manifested itself in different ways.
And in modern times, you've been able to make kind of peace with him, haven't you? I mean, was that difficult at the time, or was it something that you felt naturally you wanted to do?
No, I think it was a natural thing that happened, with some time, with some distance, and having the space to kind of decide for myself the kind of woman I wanted to be able to be in control of my own autonomy, to be the author of whatever vision I had for my own future, gave me, I think, the voice I needed to say to him the things that needed to be said, and the things that needed to be written in this book. And I think, then he was in a place to receive them. So I think there was a lot of growth for both of us to get to that place.
You started off talking a little earlier about how, you started to rebel, as it were. How did that manifest itself? How did that begin, and how did it grow?
I mean, a lot of it really began with writing and with poetry, because growing up in a household where I was often told, a woman's highest virtue was her silence and her obedience, I didn't often feel like I had a voice. And it was through writing and through poetry that I cultivated that voice and nurtured a self that also came with little seedlings of doubt of, what I was being told, or questions about what was happening in the household. And so, I think it really began with writing and with poetry, and then seeing the roads diverge between me and my brother, where the rules were so different for him than they were for me and my sisters. I just began to question a little bit.
And does it surprise you that you've been able to carry it forward in the way that you have, to the extent now where we're seeing your book being shown on a television channel?
I don't know if surprise is the right word, but I am, really grateful, and it often feels very surreal, because I think of that young girl in Jamaica in that small seaside village in Montego Bay. And, you know, she just wanted to be able to make for herself what she would become, and had dreams for writing poems, which is probably the most unlikely thing I could be. And so it is sometimes surreal, but I feel very, very grateful.
And you were helped a lot by your mother, weren't you? I mean, she used to do things to encourage your writing.
Yes.
When you were younger, particularly.
Absolutely. You know, I often say I owe so much of this to my mother, that I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if it weren't for her. She herself had always been a lover of literature, a lover of poems. She kind of got books wherever she could find them. And she shared that love with me and my siblings. And yeah, through her, I discovered how expansive literature and language can be, and the power of literature to really change a life.
So if you read the book, what do you think people will get out of it?
Well, I hope, you know, they would come away with a more nuanced understanding of Rastafari history and how it intersects with Jamaican culture. I hope that they would have an idea of Jamaica now that goes beyond the postcard paradise. I would hope that they would see a portrait of a young Rasta girl, of Jamaican womanhood, and something that really complicates the idea of Rastafari, which I think is a very male-centered one. And to give a view of what real ordinary Jamaican lives are like. This is what I would hope. And for anybody who ever grew up in a household, or who today feels that their voice is stifled or they're not in control of their own autonomy, if this book reaches even one reader who needs to hear that, that your voice has power and what you have to say is important, then I think I would be glad.
So having that story, writing that story, now publishing that story, and having that message out there, if you like,
Yeah.
What comes next? How are you going to be able to carry it forward into your future adults?
I've barely finished this one.
Come on, we need a sequel, another sequel. But,
you know, I'm working on a novel about Jamaican history. I mean, told over 6 centuries of Jamaican history, and I'm also working on a collection of poems that's centered around Rastafari vernacular, the particular way that they speak, by disrupting the English language and turning the words on, upside down. For example, my father doesn't say understand, he says overstand. He doesn't say appreciate, he says appreciate love. And this comes from, an anti-colonial root, the desire to disrupt the English language. And in my mind, I'm calling this Rasta poetics, because I think there's something so fascinatingly poetic about it. And I'm interested in exploring this through poetry, but also infusing a feminine rebellion inside of the linguistics.
Yeah. Would you call it feminism, your work, your writing?
I would say feminism, or, womanism, which is a more, enacted feminist idea. Yeah.
Okay. Well, great to have you with us on the program. Thank you very much for coming in and
Thank
talking.
Interesting. I asked in the chat, is this a Rastafari hit piece? And to be fair, you do find Muslim women who step up and have critiques of that faith, and what they feel is patriarchy and whatnot. So I'm curious to see how others here feel about it. I know Jose in the chat, he said white DNA, white dick and attention, F these harlots next. Pardon me?
I'm sorry, go ahead, cool. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I'll be, it'll be interesting to see what others have to say. I wish Sister Raw was in the chat. I would have really liked to seeing her thoughts. Tonight would have been a good night to hear her thoughts on this as well. Let me start with Black Steel on this one. Black Steel, Rasta woman finds her feminist voice.
Well, honestly, I'm glad that she says that she was able to reconcile with her father, right? So it looks like whatever issue she has within the Rastafarian religion, it did not keep her from having a relationship or from being estranged with her father, which is, I think, is a good thing. She seems to be a young person. Young people are by their very nature rebellious, right? Young people, when presented with a tradition, they're going to be like, well, why? They're going to question things. And I think sometimes that's a good thing, you know? I don't think we should take any tradition just because it's tradition. I believe it's okay to question things. It helps young people find their place in the world. I think her critiques, honestly, were kind of tame. I didn't see her bad mouthing Rastafarianism. And I guess the dude was trying to lead her in that way. He asked her, was it violent? She never said, yeah, it was violent. She never said that, which I picked up on that. She didn't say, yeah, it's violent. She used very coded language. But I guess he was trying to lead her in a way to kind of paint Rastafarianism as something that's inherently violent and abusive and whatever. I don't think she said that. I think that her statements were very measured, and I think that she was just focusing on some of the upbringing. And the thing is, Rastafarianism is really it takes a lot of stuff from the Bible, you know, and the Bible itself is very patriarchal and very controlling. I think that that's a very good point. I think she started to say feminism, but then she kind of changed it to womanism. And I think that's an important distinction because feminism at its very nature is really about it's an integrationist movement. And it was made for white women really to gain the spoils and gain the benefits of white hegemony that white men share. White women figured, hey, we gave birth to the soldiers, we might as well benefit from that. So feminism to me is when you have a female president committing the same atrocities, the same crimes that a male president would, or a female CEO stealing the resources or exploiting the workers the same way a male CEO is. It's really just an integrationist movement where Rastafarianism is meant to be in opposition to, like she was saying, imperialism, slavery, white domination. I think that's a much better way to look at that Rastafari in itself is a movement meant to empower African people. So I'll go ahead and let the rest of y'all speak, and I'll sit back and listen to what you have to say. Thanks.
I appreciate that, Black Steel. Trigger Happy 262 Plus said in the chat, feminism has always been used against Black people. There can be better ways at mending the relationship between Black men and women without feminism, in his opinion. He goes on to say, Africana womanism is better than both feminism and womanism and has a much more holistic analysis. Our boy, Real Black Gentleman, is out there saying greetings, y'all. So greetings to RBG. Thanks for being here tonight. With that said, let me hear from Anthony McPhail. Anthony would say,
Hey, Coco, yeah, for tag constraint, I'll pass on it, man. I think Black Steel and Triggerhead, they pretty much say what I want to say. So I'll pass on it.
all right, no problem. Oni, what say you to it?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Black Steel in the sense of this was pretty tame. I mean, the thing is this, that in a Western society, like generally speaking, there's two things. One, Western society is not really pro-religious on the liberal side, right? And two, you know, the whole gender discrimination thing is pretty looked down upon. So it's going to be a lot harder to do that in like America. So I'm guessing she's in America. And that's one of the things that of course I'm not saying, I mean some people are really opposed to gender discrimination. Let's put it that way. And I'm not saying I'm not opposed, I'm just saying that some people are. And the other issue to it is that the concept of gender roles is actually really a discouraged conversation. So whereas I might think, oh yeah, gender roles makes a lot more sense, to articulate, that's kind of, I guess the word is taboo, right? So you would have to expect, growing up in the West, concepts of gender, the neutral kind of gender roles, and the more more common gender discrimination are really taboo, are really taboo and really, especially gender discrimination, really discouraged. And because it is, this whole religious kind of conversation is going to have a pushback, you know? So like for instance, here in Tanzania, there's some things that I'm not comfortable with in regards to, gender roles and gender discrimination, in the sense of like, you might have, like, let's say a 10-year-old girl, like a niece or something, who would just come and wash dishes. Now I'm like, come on, let the little girl be a little girl. And they're like, no, this is what women do. You know what I mean? It's what girls do. And I'm not really opposed to somebody washing my dishes, except for the fact that I don't want children washing my stuff, because I don't think children wash dishes well, right? That's really my opposition. But the reality is that, yeah, you can definitely see that sort of, I don't want to say traditional, but that kind of distinction between boys and girls, and what boys are expected, and what's expected of boys and what's expected of girls, to be more profound in different societies or different economies. But in America, it's not a thing, and I think partly because in America, girls have really good access to economic wealth, like to economic parity with boys, or with men. And because of that, it's kind of like a fool's errand to discourage them from economic pursuits in America, whereas in other countries or in other societies, or let's say in traditional societies, you might not necessarily find girls having economic parity with men. And so, it would be better to encourage them to, find better mates. In America, it's like, oftentimes, even in white circles, women are earning more than men, Now, obviously not on the highest echelon, right? But, on a normal level, women, can potentially. So, I think in that sense, it's like, yeah, if you really do have some strong religious beliefs or some strong cultural beliefs, don't go to America, if you go to America and you're like, oh, I'm going to subjugate women or something, or I'm going to, keep my traditional values or what have you, right? You're in for a rude awakening, because nobody keeps their traditional values in America, except for, no, actually nobody does, like the closest you can think is maybe white people, but like really they are also, heavily integrated and heavily adapting of other people's cultures as well. So it really is just kind of like this. I mean, because it seems like they're in America, so or the UK, it seems, right? But it really seems like the father had some ideas, or he's trying to rebel against Babylon while in Babylon. And it's like, that's just his fool's errand. Just stay inside of wherever you were from, or wherever you were, and you won't have to worry about society corrupting, if you will. But again, it's not really like society is corrupting. It's that society, particularly America, offers really high paying jobs to both men and women, and it would be in the interest of men and women in America to pursue those high-paying jobs, and acting discriminatory or what have you towards women is not only discouraged, but it doesn't make any real economic sense in America. And that's and so it's just kind of like she's pushing back on something that really, it would make a lot of sense for a young lady to push back on, and that's all I'm saying.
I appreciate that viewpoint. In the chat, Trigger262 says, how much of our gender paradigms changed by way of Abrahamic religions in Africa should also be highlighted, but even then, America would likely be diametrically opposed to pre-colonial Africa. Buana, you heard everything everyone else had to say. What say you to all of it?
Yeah, she is a young person. And as a young person, as the brother was suggested, young people are rebellious. They question things. And she have a right to question things as a young person, question the world around her. There's nothing wrong with that. Even it doesn't matter the gender she's in, whether it's a male or a female, she has a right to question that. But for me personally, in looking at this, it's almost like a Jewish woman telling a Nazi how oppressive her Jewish father was. This man is an Englishman. Why would you tell an Englishman is more oppressive than an Englishman, and an Englishman's history is much more oppressive than your father could ever be or even think to be. Even in Jamaica itself, there was a man named Thomas Thistlewood. Any brother or sister could look up Thomas Thistlewood. He was the things that the English did in Jamaica, would make the ideas of what she talking about. My dad didn't want me to wear a dress, and it would make a regular person blush. And the fact that she is telling them how oppressive her dad was an Englishman. It is really, it's beyond the pale. It's like, man, don't you know what happened in Jamaica? Do you know what the British did in Jamaica? They started the shit. The ideas that your dad have in his head, many of the ideas come from the British man. So for her to be, it's almost like she's confessing how oppressive and bad the dad was to the Englishman. Could you imagine such a thing? The optics for me is just bad. I would have rather her be speaking maybe to an African woman or a Jamaican woman. They could have a discussion on it and things like that. But this man, he is not the person to confess how oppressive your dad was. He is not the man to confess that to. And you notice the questions, was he violent? Yeah, because they want to hear the violent talk. Imagine a British man saying how violent. Imagine a British man telling a Jamaican woman, talking about how violent her dad. Do you know the history of the English in Jamaica? It really is disgusting to me. It's disgusting to me. Really, it comes across as very disgusting to me. But I know this young sister is very young right now. She doesn't understand context. She doesn't understand optics. Maybe she does. Maybe she does. Who knows? But I'm just saying that she is really being willfully used. I understand she is trying to sell a book, but to sell your book, sister, you really need to understand context and many other kinds of things. I understand you want to wear makeup now and you want to live as a quote unquote modern woman, but sister, you are giving up more than you are gonna get back from so-called selling your story to the Western world, in particular to this British man. My goodness. But I'll leave it there, Coco, man. I think our sisters, I think Black people, not only our sisters, I think that we need to look at the full scope of things when we doing certain things rather than just willfully selling our story to the outside world without understanding context. Why do the British feel her story is more important than most other stories that probably people was trying to sell their book in the past week? Why do they feel like it's more important to sell a story? Why do you think that why do you think that it's more important to talk about the oppressive dad in Jamaica? This British man take the task of this. I don't know. I think that
Well,
some of us need to understand context more. Go ahead, Anthony. I know you want to talk. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
That's why I didn't have nothing to say. I think he's talking to a white man.
I think
Anthony, it's so crazy. It's so crazy to me. The optics of it is so
I
insane
said,
to me.
here she goes.
It's insane. It's insane.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, brother. I said, here she goes. That's why I said I couldn't even talk about this. Because here this sister is talking about being a Rasta. Me, I don't think she was too much of a Rasta if you hear how she was talking. Because you, Koku, you know how Rasta was talking when she was about the overstanding and understanding. It seemed to me like she was talking from a purely European standpoint. You know what I'm saying? That she didn't understand that. If you're a Rasta woman, you understand that kind of terminology that Rasta people say. Now, don't get me wrong. I ain't saying there ain't no patriarchy in Rastafarianism, because like I said, it's tied to the Abrahamic religion, the Hebrew religion. But I'm just saying, if you just listen at what she's saying, she don't sound like she grew up in no Rasta home. You know what I'm saying? She don't sound like she grew up in the Rasta lifestyle. She sounds like a young sister who's a feminist who's been educated by the white women, or at least by Western feminism. You know what I'm saying? And what turned me off was she sitting up here talking. You sit up here talking to a European about now it's in the context of your father, you know, in Rastafarianism, but it's really in the bigger context. You really downgrading the black man in front of the white man. You know what I'm saying? I look at it that way. You really down. You putting that. You know, I mean, it was some bullshit. That's why I was like, I can't even say nothing about this. Now, I ain't gonna, like I said, time constraints. I ain't gonna hold nobody up. I'll knock off right there.
I want to add something that I noticed no one pointed out. No one pointed out her mama influenced a lot of this shit. She literally sat there and said her mom inspired her, and her mom pushed her to write this book, this, that, and the other. Her mama pushed a lot of this stuff.
But Koku, that's what I'm saying. I was going to that part. That's why I was saying she couldn't have been a real Rasta. Okay, if she's a Rasta and her mama's a Rasta too. Koku, you know more about. Hey, I studied Rastafarianism. I got Rastafarian friends, but I know you know way more than I do. Come on, man, Koku, you know Rasta women, and you know that kind of thing don't fly with Rasta women.
And I agree. So it sounds like, to me, the reason why I brought it up, it sounds to me that the mama went through whatever she went through with the father and influenced the daughter to be kind of, you know, I don't want to say anti-Rastafarian, but somewhat on a certain level. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the sentiments of her mother, really, that's being displayed. And I find that very interesting. You know, again, I'm not here to cape for Rastafarianism. I'm sure there are practitioners who go overboard, because again, these are Abrahamic religion adjacent type things, right? Judeo-Christian type things. I'm sure there's guys who go overboard, but I just find it interesting that, you know, she's basically, yeah, I mean, Jose said it right there. He says, take off the gloves. Her mother betrayed her father. That's a very interesting thing. And, you know, once you start talking about feminism, as Trigger Happy 262 Plus said earlier, that really doesn't work for us. You know what I mean? So the mama became a feminist at some point and influenced the daughter to be one as well. And that's something we have to be careful of, because if you really think about what she's saying too, the father had rules. I think Oni touched on that. The father had rules. And isn't that what we say black men supposed to be? Aren't we? So isn't that what said it like damn near every week on here? Black men are supposed to be the leaders in their homes and this, that, and the other, leaders in the community. So it sounded like the black father was a leader. He had a certain way he wanted things done in the home, and the mother had a problem with it and influenced the daughter. That's an undermining of the family unit too. We just got to be honest about this stuff. that's a clear undermining of the family unit. But anyway, does anyone else have any last thoughts on this prompt? Any last thoughts on this prompt? Seems
Yes,
not.
yes. I
Okay.
have thoughts. I understand that the world don't want to take advice or authority from black men, especially when they should. Black men are supposed to be fathers, and fathers is a role of leadership. You know, she says nothing about the law, where a bunch of old white British men create the law and they create structure for society and how it's supposed to run. You don't question them things, though. I don't question them. Needless to say, I'm not even gonna have big beef with her. I'm just saying that this sister here is, I feel like she's a little misguided. When they have these little patriarchy, they learn these little college terms in school. My sister, or for all the sisters under the sound of my voice and things like that, there must be order, there must be structure. And I believe in order and structure. And you may take all the order and structure for people who are unlike me, you know, only from the white man and things like that. But if you want to be with a man on this planet, especially a man who look like you, you're gonna have to take order and structure. It is what it is. And I understand that many of my brothers may be shy to say these kinds of things, but I don't think that she would be so well dressed and poised if it wasn't for her daddy. He must have had some qualities, because he's able to get you on this kind of platform speaking the way that you speaking. Now you get vexed and we'll talk about how oppressive he was. Congratulations to the daddy, at least to some point, to get your daughter to this level, so that she could come up on these European platforms and debase you. But I don't listen. A strong man is a strong man. The Williams sisters, although a bunch of them marry a bunch of white men, he at least get them to where they need to be. Now you have to take on some personal responsibility. Look around you. Look around you. You know what I mean? You don't want a man like your father, but your father gets you in a position where you would never be without him. Consider that. You know, the white world tells you, don't listen to the black man. The black man has nothing relevant to say. The black man, you shouldn't pay attention to him. Girl, you need to run your and control your own destiny. This is these some things that you get from the Western world you must question from time to time, because their own white women don't do it to them. And if they do, they are rejects. They are rejects. They're not paid attention to. They're not paid attention to. Powerful men gonna have women who gonna be by their side, do the things they need to do. That is from the aristocratic level to the so-called corporate level. Look at Donald Trump. Look at Donald Trump. He met, if his women don't fall in line with him, get rid of them. He get rid of them. You know what I mean? We talking on a level of power and position. If you want to run the roost, go ahead and go run the world. You see where that takes you and gets you. You see where that takes you and gets you. But these are kind of power kind of conversations, and I'll just leave it there, Coco. Go ahead, brother.
No, I appreciate that. So I'm having some internet issue here. I can't get on TikTok. I can't get on Twitter. Drop a 1 in the chat for me if you guys can hear my voice. Shout out to Joe, who's out there in the chat. If you guys can hear my voice still in the chat, drop a 1 for me, if you don't mind. KW7 earlier said, we haven't learned anything from the past 500 years of dealing with Yoruba. And I agree with that. I don't see if anyone's giving me a 1 out in the chat. But if you guys on the panel can still hear me, so I must be on the internet still. I don't understand what's going on. Okay. Trigger, give me a 1. Wanna give me 1. Okay. So what we'll do is I'll go to Shoot the Breeze topic number 3. I'm gonna mix up the order that I had because of the issue with Twitter and stuff and TikTok. I can't